Grown men do cry. Thank you all for being here today to honor and celebrate the life of my daughter, Fancy. Fancy was just 25 years old, but she lived with a spirit that could fill a lifetime. She was beautiful, smart, incredibly talented, a gifted writer and artist, someone who lived with creativity in every part of their day. She loved training horses, she loved drama, and she loved putting together an outfit that, honestly, sometimes had me questioning her insanity. But somehow she always pulled it off. Fancy never did anything halfway. She was fearless in expressing exactly who she was. She had a boldness that made people notice, but also a softness, a deep heart that only those closest to her truly knew. When Fancy loved, she loved with everything she had. And there was no greater love in her life than her beautiful daughter, Silvera. Silvera was born on Friday, November the 13th, 2020. And from that day on, Sol was the light in Fancy's world. Being her mom was the most important, most beautiful thing Fancy ever did. But along with all that light, there were struggles. Fancy was caught in a battle so many people face today, fentanyl. She was clean for 7 months. She fought hard. She wanted a different life. But addiction is cruel. It lies, it steals, it tries to break the bonds of people who love her most. And in the end, one relapse cost her everything. That reality is heartbreaking. It's maddening, and it's not fair. But I refuse to let her story end there. Fancy's life, her laughter, her creativity deserves more than just silence. It deserves a legacy. So here is my hope. My hope is that by me being honest about what happened, Fancy's story might reach someone else who is struggling, or someone who loves someone who's struggling. That we might all become a little more compassionate, a little more present, a little braver in having the hard conversations with our people. Because nothing will ever be the same without her. But we carry her with us in every memory, in every piece of her art, in every sparkle of Silvera's eyes. Thank you. I'm going to read a couple of poems that Fancy Russell wrote herself. This one is called Ashes and Altars. I chased the smoke of silver sheets, watched it dance like ghosts I knew, little blue lies curling upward, whispering, we'll carry you through. But it never carried, only chained and buried, made my bones a brittle tomb, where light couldn't find me, and hope had no room. I wasn't a junkie. I was aching. I wasn't lost, I was drowned. Each hit numbered the memory of everything that I let down. The world saw a stranger, sick and thin with hollow eyes, but beneath the soot and silence was a girl screaming for life. But I didn't want to leave. I wanted none to stay. That foil was my altar, and I prayed every day. Not for God, not for grace, but for one more breath without pain. And in that twisted ritual, I nearly went insane. I burned bridges and blessings with the same steady flame. Forgot the sound of laughter. Forgot from where I once had came. Through the nights I stayed awake. And the days blurred together. Something within me seemed to ask, will I ever get better? And then one draw one dawn, raw and trembling, I finally dropped the body. I glanced up from my deathbed and looked God in the eye. It hurt like rebirth, like fire in my veins. But peace poured in slowly. Once there was only shame. Now I wake up with clear lungs and a fire that's real. Not the kind that consumes me, but the kind that can heal. I've rebuilt some bridges of the kin I once had burned, and they hold me with grace. I struggle to believe I deserve or have earned. Laughter found me again, like a long-lost friend. My faith blooms like a rose, and forever upward it ascends. No foil, no lie, just truth in my chest. And the knowledge that is healing is one of the greatest kinds of blessed. So if you're still chasing that cold, deadly dragon's kiss, know there's warmth beyond it, and you were born to live. To conquer and to lead, to feel and to remember, to reclaim your name and rise like a fire ember, to flow with forward movement, to truly grow and not to falter, to turn from the ashes you have made and find vitality in new altar. Isn't that beautiful? That was fancy. Keep pushing through. Keep finding you. With our good intentions, we start a chain reaction of many interventions. First is 1, then 2, then 3, 4, 5. As we better ourselves, I have found, to my surprise, as we climb farther from that hell, we end up saving other lives. With our just for today, we begin to lead the way. I have a verse that I want to read. And this came from Christ. In John chapter 14, verse 1, it says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's houses are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, and that where I am, there you may also be. And where I go, you know that the way you know. But I ask Mr. Dennis Burke to come up and say a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Daniel. That's a beautiful tribute. Beautiful tribute. Well, as I look over this group of individuals, it's very impressive to see how many people were touched by Fancy's life, including me. Many of you have known Fancy many, many more years than I, and probably should be up here in my place. But let me tell you a little bit about what my purpose is here. I believe that God had Fancy's and my life cross. This isn't about me. This is about what he did in her life. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about that process. I also want to say that some of the things is when I first encountered Fancy, I don't want this to bring back bad memories because ultimately I want this to be a message of hope. I met Fancy about 4 years ago. I had some property on 395, and I had a tenant that was a very good mechanic. And Fancy and a friend of hers were up there in a car that was being worked on. And I noticed this young lady sitting in the front seat, staring at the dashboard, it looked like. And so I went over and kind of waved, and she rolled down the window, and I says, hello, I'm Dennis. And she says, I'm Fancy. And we did the obligatory double take, or double speak. Your name is what? Fancy. I bet she did that thousands of times in her life. Okay? I have a terrible time with names. I never forgot Fancy's name. Another 6 months went by, and same thing. Showed up. And this time it looked like I think it was a truck and a little bit of work, and I once again waved and said, "Hello, Fancy." I remembered her name. About 3 years ago on this property, I had a squatters camp formed. Now this wasn't tents and cardboard boxes. These were trailers, these were motor homes, they were fifth wheels. They just started appearing out of nowhere up there. I don't know, I probably had a different reaction than most people, but I went up there to see who was up there. You know, the interesting thing, I loved them all. They were all in their own way very unique. And sure enough, out of one of the motorhomes comes Fancy. I don't think it was hers, but she was up there. And I'll tell you right from the get-go, it was very apparent that Fancy was different. And I'm not going to tell you that everybody without a place to go, let's take it that way. Nobody should be considered to be in a homeless situation to be in a place, but Fancy just didn't seem to fit in at all. She was very concerned about everybody. She was always going around and asking how somebody was and where somebody was and what they were doing and did they need something. Fancy was very, very much a light in that way. But unfortunately, over time, the camp became such that the sanitation became horrible, and I had to evict them, and that included Fancy. I didn't see her till about another year went by. And I noticed her walking in the parking lot at Walmart. So I stopped by and we had a brief conversation. And at that time, I guess it was maybe another week or two later, I invited her to go out and have something at Taco Bell, and she accepted. And so we went out there and we sat down, and I asked her if I could say grace. So I said grace over our dinner, or lunch. And she was very cautious at first. He was this strange old guy that is showing some interest. But she began to tell me about her life. And she had such a soft heart. She told me that she loved horses and that she had a horse. And there were tears. I asked her about some of her aspirations, and she said she was hoping that she would be able to have a career in acting and would be able to have theater. She loved theater. More tears. I asked her if she believed in God. She wasn't sure. We had short prayers asking for God's blessing and guidance. And I would probably find her maybe once a month. And if I could, I was lucky, I would catch her to take her out to some sort of lunch. Our prayers over our food became longer, more of a blessings over life in general. She told me about losing her grandparents, tears, failed relationships, more tears. And finally about her daughter, Savira. That was soft. It was quite clear that things were not going according to Fancy's plan. So I prayed about what it would be that I would share with her. Oh, by the way, Fancy, a couple of things I want to put in here, interject, is that she would regularly say after she told me something that wasn't going well, but it'll be okay. It'll be okay. She didn't want people to worry about her. One of the first Bible texts I shared with Fancy is taken from Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. We discussed that God has a plan for everyone's life. You, me, everyone. I also said that sometimes by our choices, God has to move from plan A to plan B, plan C. I told Nancy I'm on like plan Z. But she listened intently. And I have to say that as I talked to her, I taught Bible classes for years. Rarely do I have somebody that's focused and intent. She was ready to hear about God, about spiritual things. Another concept was the Christian concept of being born again. Taken from John 3:3. This is Jesus talking to Nicodemus. Jesus answered and said unto him, Most assuredly I say to you, unless a man is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Nancy, her take on this verse was a little bit different. Okay? As we sometimes think of it, a man must be born again. Nancy's take was rather, we get to be born again. She says, you mean a do-over? Yes. She loved that concept and repeated it back regularly. Another favorite that we quoted back and forth comes from Proverbs 3:5. Many of you probably already memorized this. But it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Nancy loved the concept that we ask God has a plan for our life. He'll open doors, he'll direct, he'll make things, he will guide us, and that we get a do-over. One of the things I noticed as we had lunch is that Nancy generally would take most of her lunch home. I asked her, I says, oh, well, are you making this supper as well as dinner? She says, no, I'm taking it to someone else, sharing it. That was the way Nancy was. One day I asked Nancy if she would like to go flying. I have a little airplane. I asked her if she'd like to go flying. I've never seen somebody Nancy got excited as fast as anybody I've ever seen get excited. She was so excited about the possibility of going flying. So we said that the weather was good. The next day we'd meet and we would go up and take a spin around the airport a few times. Well, the next day was a nice day. I went to our appointed place. No fancy. As excited as she was, there was a question in my mind. So I went to some of the normal places I would usually find her. It was no fancy. So finally I went to the local house and asked. No, nobody had seen her there. And then asked somebody else they hadn't seen her. I asked a third person. So we began to talk about miracles. And they said, just a minute. They went behind and they found her and came out and told me, oh, Nancy's not feeling well. She doesn't want to see you. Something prompted me to say, okay, I think I'm going to go investigate this for myself. So I did, right in the backyard. And here was Nancy. And she was very sick. And so I didn't give her a lot of choice in the matter, but I scooped her up, put her in my car, took her to the emergency room. And later on, I found out that was just normal withdrawals. But to me, I thought she was poisoned at the time. It scared me to death. But at the facility, she was treated, and then they asked her again. I began to kind of put in front of you the number of miracles that happened. They asked if she would like to go into a detox program, and she said yes. Then they started naming some of the ones that were available. They had openings in. She didn't want to go to that one. She wasn't sure about this one. But then they mentioned Baker City, and she said yes. They said, okay, that's fine, except we don't have any transportation that can get you there. It just so happened that I had a business meeting scheduled in Baker City that evening for about 6 months. And so I was able to take her there. And when we got there to the detox program, they greeted us and they said, "We received Fancy's lab tests and she doesn't have whatever she needs to have in her system in order to stay in the program." More prayers. So they finally said, yes, we will keep her. They took her to the hospital, retested her, came back that she met all the criteria, and so they kept her in the program. Once again, prayers answered. Following detox, they said, we aren't sure that there's going to be a room in the rehab program. Well, following detox, that was about 15 days, Fancy felt really well. I got a text from her that said, "Well, Dennis, I decided not to go in the rehab program. I'm going to hitchhike back to Hermiston." So, more prayers. And the prayer was answered by a state trooper who noticed this young lady on a fairly cool day in Baker City walking in scrubs to the local truck stop. And so he didn't arrest her, but he picked her up. Between God, the trooper, and myself, we were able to get Fancy to go back to the rehab program. Another miracle. As Fancy and I sort of recounted all the miracles that opened for Fancy, we started to use the phrase, there are no coincidences. In this case, there's just no coincidences. Fancy adapted and then thrived in the rehab program. By the way, there's a lot of credit that goes to the Baker Women's House in terms of a wonderful program that they offer. She developed great friends, and she began to attend the Harvest Church in Baker City. Every time I talked with her, if any of you spoke with her after she got into the rehab program, you would know what I'm talking about. She talked faster, more excited, more animation. In fact, at some point I just had to slow down. I can't, she's going too fast. But she just was thriving there. There began to be a little bit less phone calls because as she was healing, she was mending relationships with a lot of other people. I look around this room, I know that many of you were probably involved in that. She just had a much broader group of people that she was talking with. Well, one day, I was just going to say, after generally a service there, they also had Bible study class, which she was just into and right in the center of. She called and told me that she had noticed that there was a brochure in the church that had a check mark for if you were interested in baptism. And so she asked about it. We had a chance to discuss the concept of what it means. And she just grabbed onto that. I get a call about a week later saying that she's going to be baptized that Sunday. By the way, if you want something that will really bring tears to your eyes, December 8th, Harvest Church, they have you can look on YouTube and see that service, and towards the end you'll see Fancy's baptism and her testimony. And her testimony is absolutely phenomenal, where she talks about how much peace she now has in her life, leaving a life of sin and fear, and as she's baptized. Fancy graduated February 5th, and she addressed everybody in the room when she graduated, all the way around. And from thank yous to stay strong to even a few people in the room get clean. For a secular program, I have to say that graduation was about as spiritual of a program as I've probably heard. It was marvelous. As Fancy grew spiritually, socially, she improved physically, and her therapy helped her deal with some facets of her life. She changed. She talked differently. She wrote differently. But her goals and her aspirations changed as well. She had a marvelous counselor there. Her name was Tracy Trump, and she told me that now she was interested in using her experience that she's been through as being a counselor and to helping people that were experiencing the same kind of challenges that she had. After her graduation, she moved to the Portland House in LeGrand. Again, an excellent group of people that warmly welcomed her. I wish Sarah was here. She was the great house head. That was just the right person that she needed. Blue, that she said was her very best friend. She got a good job, she worked hard, and she had a lot of continuing growth. Nancy attended the Adventist Church in LeGrand and made many friends. She became an active member of Underground Oasis. I don't know how many of you have heard of that program. It's marvelous. And it is a program put on by several churches in the Grand area, and they basically target people that are on the streets. They have Bible studies, they have all kinds of different types of meetings, testimonies, singing, and all kinds of stuff. And she loved that and continued to grow. She rarely missed a meeting. Nancy was excited about the direction of her life. She told me one time, she says, "What a life I have now." She was preparing her testimony to give at church. And that was like a whole service. She wanted to be rebaptized to sort of signify that her relationship with Christ had continued to grow. You know, there's a text in 1 Corinthians, well, actually several texts, but it's 1 Corinthians 3, 5 to 11, where Paul talks about that I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. In Nancy's life, we could expand that. Probably. I mean, some people planted, some people watered, some people weeded, some people fertilized, some people trimmed. There was a lot of people involved in Nancy's life. But God gave her. She was his child. She had so many goals. She wanted that closer walk with God. She had some educational aspirations. Career, family. I'm going to say right now, I don't know why she was taken, but I have faith in God's timing. You know, it's if you read the Bible, you'll see that it's okay to question God. Abraham questioned God. Moses, Job, David, almost embarrassingly so, almost makes you uncomfortable at the level he questioned God. But this I know, we will see Nancy again. Nancy rests in Jesus. No more pain, no more chaos, no more struggles. I know we have different beliefs, almost. I know we have different beliefs, perhaps in death, as we sit around this room. I believe that Nancy is sleeping in Jesus. And I'd like to close with this text. It comes from 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 to 18. But I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive will remain, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words. We're all sad and heartbroken. But we can comfort each other with these thoughts. Fancy has touched many in this room. There's lots of memories to share. But the full impact of her life remains to be seen. God is waiting for each of us to open the door as Fancy did. I look forward to seeing Fancy again. She wants to see all of you there too.
The family would invite anybody who wants to talk, share stories, say something.
She lived right next door to me for years and years. I babysat with her, etc. I remember when I broke my ankle, Amber went and got the phone. Fancy came out with a flat sheet and was holding it up around me so the sun wouldn't hit my face. She was so compassionate. And when she graduated from rehab, she called me. She says, Grandma, I know you tried to tell me many, many times about God. And she says, I just didn't understand. Maybe I was too young. But she says, right now, I feel like I could fly. She said, it is so wonderful. I'm free now. And then when Tammy woke me up I wasn't asleep that night, but she come in at a little after 2 o'clock in the morning and told me what had happened with Fancy. I just couldn't believe it. But she is an American ace. She doesn't have to fight Satan anymore. Thank you.
The candlelighting already did this, but hopefully this time it's a lot easier to go through. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyler Haskell. I want to thank you all for coming out to help to support the Russell family. Tammy, David, Amber, and her precious daughter. I am sad to see a Fancy, a precious soul, lose to a nasty disease we all know as addiction. I myself was once part of that society, and I have no judgment for any actions Fancy did. I met Fancy one summer moving cattle for my cousin Neva. Fancy was smart, had no fear on a horse, and was always an easy person to get along with. I stayed in touch with Fancy, with her till about high school years, and then we disconnected. When we truly reconnected, Fancy was already lost and was trying to find her way back. I remember having a deep conversation with her anytime I ran into her when she was in Hermiston. I would offer her help any way I could, even if it meant just listening to her plan a better way to better herself. We reconnected on Facebook later once she moved and made it to the Grand. I was truly proud of her like we all were. I know leaving here today there's going to be heartbreaks and grief, and we all will wear some more than others. As heartbreaks are just emotions with a lot of feeling deep down, grief is not just an emotion. It's an unraveling space where something once lived but is now gone. It carves through you with a hollow ache where once love resided. In the beginning, it feels unbearable, like a wound that will never close, but over time the raw edges begin to mend. Pain softens, but the imprint remains quiet, and a reminder of once was there. The truth is, you will never really move on. You'll move with it. The love you have does not disappear, it transforms. It lingers and into echoes of laughter and the warmth of old memories and silent moments. Where you still reach out for what is no longer there, that's okay. Grief is no burden to be hidden and is not a part of a weakness to be ashamed of, as is the deepest proof that love once existed, that something beautiful once has truly touched your life. So let yourself feel it, let yourself mourn, let yourself remember there is no timeline, there is no right way to grieve. Some days will be heavy, and some days will feel lighter. Some moments will bring unexpected waves of sadness, while others will fulfill your gratitude for love you were truly lucky enough to experience. Honor your grief, for it is sacred, as it is a testimony to the depth of your heart, and it is time, through the pain, you will find a healing, but not because you have forgotten, but because you have learned how to carry both love and loss together.
Rhonda. I'm Tammy's cousin. I wish everyone had the opportunity to attend Fancy's graduation from Baker House and at her candlelight vigil. From everyone that spoke about Fancy, it is absolutely evident that she impacted people's lives in a beautiful way. Whether they knew her for a few weeks or much longer, in those encounters, Fancy showed them grace and shared her love with them. She was destined for amazing things. I believe Fancy would have brought people out of the trenches and into the light. I believe she would have fought for people who had no one to fight for them. I still believe Fancy can do this if we continue to speak her name and share her story. Her transformation is for the ages. Whether you believe in God or not, you have got to see what a miracle it was to see that transformation. She posted once that if you knew where God rescued me from, you'd understand why I praise Him. Not all of us have seen that space she was rescued from, nor ever want to. The truth is, addiction is all around us. It's an epidemic in our country. It does not care if you are rich or poor, successful or not. It does not care if you are a mother, father, or a child. It swallows you whole and sometimes keeps you forever. 1 in 3 people have lost someone to a drug overdose. Don't think for 1 second you are immune to this ugly disease. Unfortunately, Fancy had this awful disease and struggle in her life. Through Fancy's struggles, I did not only witness her suffering and beautiful transformation, I witnessed her mother. I witnessed the true meaning of a mother. Tammy, you have taught me so much through all of this. Your strength and fierce love for Fancy was so evident and absolutely beautiful. I pray that I can be that strong when my children struggle in this life. Thank you for showing all of us how deep and far a mother's love can go. Fancy was more than her addiction. She was beautiful inside and out. She was a poet, a master of words, an artist, a horse whisperer like her sister and mother, a lover of animals. She was a mother, daughter, sister, friend, and lover of Christ. She's seen the beauty in many things, from flowers, bones, random sticks, old churches, and to the suffering on the streets. I truly believe Fancy can continue to change people's lives through the sharing of her testimony. I mean all of it. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. Don't let her light fade. Speak her name and her truth. Share her love for Christ and why she came to love Him. May Silveria get to know her mom through all of us that loved Fancy and seen her in our own way. Fancy, your life mattered and it will change lives forever.
Evil bus drivers. I am pleased with the testimony of Christ, that Fancy found Christ in her life. I want to deviate from my story a little bit to a funny that occurred to me. Most of the kids on my bus route graduate from Pilot Rock, and before they graduate, when they turn 15, 16, they leave the bus riding to someone else. They graduate to a higher plane. This one decides to ride with his mom for safety's sake. But they usually get their own driver's license, and then they don't want to ride on my stinky old bus with me anymore. They don't want to listen to me tell them to sit down, shut up, quit throwing things. But Fancy informed me that she wouldn't be riding the bus the next morning up Birch Creek. And okay, you're old enough, you're going to be doing something, you're going to be driving. And so I headed out the next morning, completely forgetting everything that she had said. And it was dark that morning. It was cold and chilly that morning. And I'm driving out Birch Creek, and all of a sudden I see an animal's eyes coming down the highway towards me. My first thought was, there's an elk in the road. Pull over, slow down, and maybe they won't scratch the paint. Well, lo and behold, up comes Fancy Russell on her horse, waving, with this fancy medieval dress on that she has to be freezing to death in. And she just waves as she goes by, and I go, I escaped again. So that was my funny story for Fancy.